Hi, my name is Khleif, and I'm the host of the Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing podcast. And every week I interview multifamily rock stars, and we talk about how they've built incredible wealth for themselves and their families through multifamily properties. So hit the like and subscribe buttons to get notified every Monday when a new episode comes out. Let's get to it. Welcome to another edition of Lifetime Cash Flow Through Real Estate Investing. I'm Khleif, and I am thrilled that you're here. And you are going to get tremendous value from the gentleman that I'm interviewing today. His name's Larson, and he's the founder and principal of Next Level Income. By the way, his website has a lot of free resources. You should check it out. But he's been in the real estate space for 20 plus years, done over $1 billion in acquisitions, and done it with some people I know quite well. And he also owns a lot of car washes and lives in a beautiful part of the country, Asheville, North Carolina, which I absolutely love. But welcome to the show, brother.
Rod, thanks so much for having me, man. I'll tell you what, your episode on our podcast was one of the most well-received. And I think it took some people by surprise. But what you teach about mindset is not only inspiring, but it's just so positive in terms of energy. I love it.
Thank you. And your podcast is also Next Level Income, correct?
It is Next Level.
Yeah, that's the name. Yes, forgive me. I get interviewed a little bit, but love it. Well, listen, I'm glad you're here, buddy. And let's start the way we always do by having you kind of give us a much better background on you than I did in the 2 seconds I tried. So please tell your story.
That was wonderful. So I started specifically in real estate when I was 21 years old, but I grew up in Maryland, and I started racing bicycles when I was about 14 years old. And that was really my first love. We always remember our first loves in different parts of our lives. And I really felt like that, I really found what I was meant to do. When I started racing bikes, I ended up going to Virginia Tech, which is where I bought that first property. But kind of in between those two stages, I met my best friend, and my best friend and I, we raced together. Met him at a race. We lived 10 miles away from each other. He lived in Annapolis. I lived like just south of there, or north of there, I guess it was. And so we each ride 5 miles after school every day. We started training together, and he became like a brother, Rod. And so I was racing. He was a year younger than me, so he was coming to Virginia Tech the following year, which was my sophomore year, his freshman year. And that summer, June 21st, 1997, he passed away. Had a massive brain hemorrhage. I walked in the hospital. I didn't know he was dead. And the doctor said, if you can come here. And he took me back, and there was my friend.
Wow.
I went back to school, put my head down, raced my bike. And after a year, I quit because I realized that I wasn't really happy. And I won actually his memorial race the second year in a row. I was flying. I was in such great shape.
Wow.
I was winning a lot of races. I was basically at the point to become a professional. The year I quit, the next year, my team actually went pro. And I stepped away from the sport. And the reason is that I knew I was meant to do more. And, in this life, we've talked about, the challenges that you've been through, and, the success that you've come to. And in this world, the reality is you need money to do things and to have an impact in a lot of ways. Right. And I said, well, how am I going to, become financially independent? And I started trading in the stock market, which was kind of the first big thing. I learned about compound interest from a family friend, actually the same one that introduced me to cycling. And ultimately, after a lot of sleepless nights, some great wins, some great losses in the stock market, I discovered real estate. Built a little portfolio. And then long story short, it'd be about a little over 10 years ago now. I started moving from single families, sold all those, and moved into multifamily, and then eventually started syndicating those deals and moved into some other asset classes. And also along the way had, met a beautiful woman, started a family, and moved to Asheville as well. So,
you're living the dream, brother. You live in a beautiful place. You're making things happen. You got into the real estate business at the perfect time after the crash. So your timing was incredible. Now, when you say bicycle racing, you're talking about like Lance Armstrong kind of racing?
Yeah, and actually, I don't mean to name drop, but I actually got to train with Lance before he won the tour.
Kidding.
I don't think his entourage would let me around afterwards. But So I always say I was lucky, Rod, that I was good enough not to have to make some of the decisions that the pros did, kind of in the early 90s with drugs. And look, I think whatever area of life you look at, whether it's business or sports, there's bad actors. There's people that make bad choices. But I saw my friends coming back from Europe and telling me the stories of what was going on over there. And I was like, man, like the last thing I want to do is do drugs to be like a mediocre pro. So
I don't have any judgment around it at all. He was, I mean, in that type of a sport, the endurance, I mean, truly likely one of the best athletes on the planet, on the face of the earth. So, I don't care about all that other stuff, but I mean, that's really cool that that's what you were doing. And, and I'm very sorry to hear about your friend. Let me ask you this, if you don't mind. Were there any epiphanies associated with that experience? Anything that changed your trajectory? We kind of glossed over it, and I'm sorry. And if you want to keep glossing over it, it's fine.
No. Okay. I didn't. I wanted to make sure I kind of mentioned that because it was impactful. Listen, I wouldn't have quit if it wasn't for his death. I wouldn't have quit the sport. The epiphany that I had, Rod, was, and look, this is actually pretty well studied. Malcolm Gladwell writes about it in his book. And my father died as well.
Which book?
It's Outliers, I believe.
Yeah. On how much time you spend on something. Right. Okay.
Yeah. How much time you spend on something. But also, something called desirable difficulties. So, Rod, you and I spent a lot of time talking about the downturn, right? And the challenges that you had. I was invested prior to that, but not at the level you were. And I didn't suffer the losses you did, but when you lose somebody in an early age, I think what happens is when you're young, if you're listening and you're in your 20s or your 30s, you think you're going to live forever. And it's like a day doesn't seem to have that much value. Well, I will tell you what, Rod, when I get up, people have asked me, they're like, why do you work so hard? Why do you do all this? You don't need to do this anymore. Why?
Right.
I feel every day is a gift. And when you realize that your friend's there one day and then the next day he's not, and he's 18, and you say, hang on a second, what if I'm not here tomorrow? Would I be proud of the life I've lived? Will I be satisfied with what I've done? Am I choosing to live each day the way that God or the universe, has meant for me to be? And am I using my talents the way they were doing? And when I came across that line with my arms up, and I didn't feel anything, I realized, you know what? This is pretty silly. I'm meant to do more. I'm meant to have a bigger impact. And I don't want to have any regrets. And if I keep doing this, I am.
Wow. I've got to tell you, that's really powerful, brother. And I've even thought about, I'm 62 and I may have 20, 25, 30 years left, whatever. I thought about getting a big jar filled with marbles to live the same way you're living right now because of your experience, just to remind, and take a marble out every day and just to remind myself to live for the day, carpe diem, and celebrate every day, and not get caught up in all the BS and the frustration, the angst and things like that I get sucked into. Everybody gets sucked into from time to time, but it's something that so that's very, very powerful, brother. So let me ask you this. You've done a lot. So you talked about that epiphany that you had then. Are there any others that come to mind? Any like, okay, now I get it moments on your trajectory, maybe transitions into different asset classes or anything, it doesn't even have to be business, it can be personal, but anything come to mind when I ask that question? Anything else?
Yeah, absolutely. So the other thing is, we hit these points in life where, so we were talking about cycling, right? I live in the mountains here in Asheville, North Carolina. And one of my favorite things is when I go ride early in the day and there's fog or cloud cover, and we actually live up a little bit above downtown. A lot of times I wake up and I can't see downtown. I can only see the tops of the mountains. Well, at one point in my life, I was down at a lower point. And if you're listening, we're all kind of on this trajectory. And one of my favorite things is riding up a mountain in the morning, and you're riding through the fog, you're riding through the clouds, and you pop out the top, and then you can see those mountaintops, right? You can see those peaks. And in my life, what I found when I left my W-2 role, so I was doing both. I was syndicating deals. I had a real estate investing business.
And most people start that way.
Yeah. And I think it's a terrific path. It takes a lot of work, right? Maybe you don't go as fast in one direction as you could, but that was the path that I took. Well, when you get there, you think, oh, now I'm financially independent. Like I don't really have to do anything. Well, it was the opposite of what I thought. It's kind of like when I'm riding, you're like, oh, wow, like I can't really see anything. I popped through that point in my life and I said, whoa, there's a whole world. There's a whole world of possibility that I didn't know. And now my vision is my sights are set higher, if that makes sense.
So as when you plowed through, rather than plateauing and laying on the beach, your goals changed, or your why. What was it? Your goals, your outcomes that you're looking for, or your why? What actually changed?
Yeah, I don't think the why has ever been changed, Rod. I've really, my why is
what is it?
Yeah. So look, well, first off, I have kind of a personal why, which is I want my boys to be proud of me. My father, I hope he looks down, he's proud of what I've accomplished. But I want to be the best father I can be for my boys, and I want to be a model, because I think that's very important in the world we live in, is to be able to provide the next generation, not only with the guidance but also that vision. And saying my boys, the other part is I want to provide that vision for other people as well, and a path and a shortcut.
How old are your boys?
They're almost 11 and almost 13.
Wow. Yeah, that's a great age. Oh my God. My boy's 27 now. So that's a great age. Anyway, please continue.
So, my why is, I think that, the reason financial independence is so important to me is because I know now that when you're financially independent, you're free to fly. You're free to do the things that you're truly meant to do. Mm-hmm. And my why is to help as many people see that it is possible to have that independence, have that ability to live your true talent, your true life, your true purpose in this world, and do that. And same. Now, and we were talking about coaching before here. The reason I work with a coach is because I'm trying to figure out how big I can create, my future and my vision. And that's, I'm struggling a little bit with that right now to see how big I can do it. We all go through those transitionary,
we reach those plateaus, and it's like, what's next? And, and guys, here's a clue. Okay. Here's a freaking clue. If there was ever a clue on this show, here's a clue. Here's a guy that's he's a GP and $1 billion worth of assets that has a coach. Okay. Michael Jordan, when he was at the top of his game, had 5 coaches. He had the head coach. He had the assistant coach. He had a nutrition coach, a relationship coach. Oh God, there was another one too. I talk about, right. And there's somebody's the best in the world at what they do. We call that a clue, my friends. Now, a shameless plug. If you're interested in my coaching program, I was just telling Chris that my students are somewhere in the over 110,000 doors that we know of owned right now. And I've been teaching less than 5 years. So if you're interested in applying to that program, text the word crush to 72345, and we'll talk to you about it. But I have coaches, and I dug in when we were talking before we started recording about his coach, and I happen to recognize his name. I've got to figure out how I know his name, but because I value that so much. We that's how you get better. Is by getting around people that want more out of life, like masterminds. And we just had my multifamily boardroom mastermind last week. It's about 16 billion in assets represented in that group, and I want to be around people that think what I think is hard is easy. And that's, that, and you do that through coaching, through being involved in groups and so on and so forth. You agree with me, Chris?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And that's the challenge, right, Rod? It's like, well, wait a minute. Like, I can't afford the time or the money to hire a coach right now. You have to change. I was speaking at one of our local meetups here last week. Mm-hmm. And one of the people said, well, Chris, hang on. Like, I hear what you're saying, but I'm just starting out. I don't have, these numbers you're talking about, they seem like out of sight. Like, I can't even fathom that. She was a teacher. Right now she's a realtor. I said to her, look, I understand. You need to find a new group to be around. And she was in a room full of 100. There was 100 people in that room. There was all the people, all the resources, all the money she needed in that room, Rod.
Right.
But to your point, if you hear something, if you say that's not possible, I can't do it, my situation's different, you need to just keep going until you find somebody that says, oh, it is possible. This is how you do it. You just might not know how to do it right now. And that's all a coach is somebody that's a few chapters ahead in the book of life. They know how to do it. They can show you what to do. And that's why it is absolutely so important.
Yeah, no question. And that coaching may just be listening to a podcast initially, but at some point, if you really want to ramp this thing, you got to pay for speed. That's the bottom line, because, and I tell people this when I'm talking to my events is, you can do it on your own, and it might take you 5, 6, 7 years where you hire somebody to help you ramp it. And you can do it in a couple of years, okay, if you really apply yourself. And that's the truth of it. So, whether it's with me or whatever, but, that's how it works. So let me ask you this, because you started talking about challenge a moment ago, and that word triggered me. What's the most challenging part of what you do right now?
Yeah. So we're working on so many different aspects of our business, Rod.
Right.
But I've had to learn a lot about areas that I didn't know. So I spent almost 20 years in the medical device industry in sales, specifically sales. And, so communications, sales are comfortable for me. Analysis, having an engineering background, spreadsheets are very comfortable for me. All that stuff is easy. But then when it comes to, like you have a phenomenally successful podcast, increasing the reach of a podcast, building out marketing programs, I was doing one-on-one coaching. It's like, well, I can't scale my time. So what I've had to learn is how do I, and I hired people in my career. I built teams before, but it's how do you find the right people to scale a business in the right way at the right time? And that's the big thing.
No, that's well said, brother, and so dead on. We're actually in that growth phase right now in my acquisition business, and I'm looking for regional help to really kick ass in what I feel like is some incredible opportunities coming in our environment. And so in our space. And so we're in the hiring, interviewing, evaluating phase of that right now. And so that's a great answer. Absolutely great answer.
If I may, Rod, a book that I'd highly recommend. So if you're listening, you're like, hey, I got the same issue. Who Not How is a terrific book.
Oh yeah.
It was like my quote unquote book of the year last year. By Dan Sullivan and Ben. I'm blanking on his last name.
That's a great book. I don't know the co-author either, but Dan's incredible. But Who Not How is a great book, guys. And so on my show, like yours, I get a lot of aspiring commercial real estate or multifamily investors, as it were. I got a lot of people that are on the sidelines. Maybe they're an engineer, they're an IT professional, they're, whatever. They're in sales, they're in the military, first responder, whatever. And they're just sitting there listening to this and like, man, $1 billion in assets, that just seems just out of reach, or, my ability to do this. It's just scary. It's, what advice would you give to someone that hasn't started yet, that's sitting there, that knows they want more out of life? I mean, you were in medical device sales. That's great business. It's killer. I know you got to sit in this. I don't know if you had to be in the operating room and be on call all the time and all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's a tough, very lucrative business, but very taxing. I have very good friends that were in it. But let's say, even if it's not that lucrative, just somebody they're coasting along at, 60 to 120 or 150,000 a year. Yeah. What advice would you give them just in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So I talk about three things, like the whole next level income strategy that I've created, over the past several years. First step is make more money. Second step is keep more money. Third step is grow your money. So here's the thing. I said this at that same meeting last week, and
that's so complicated too. Oh my God, make money, keep it, and grow it. Jeez.
Yeah, but it sounds. But
I'm intimidated by how complicated that is.
But a lot of people hear that and they're like, "Oh, that's easy for you to say, Chris." But it took me 5 years to get to the point where I was accredited, according to income. Actually, not actually more than that, because you have to make more than a couple $100,000 a year for multiple years
consistently.
in a row. Yeah, consistently. And that was just 5 years working. Plus I had an engineering degree, plus I had an MBA, plus I was working 2 jobs. I had my real estate license and my insurance license. I was working at State Farm nights and weekends, and I had my real estate license while I was finishing my MBA and doing that. So I worked, I worked 16-hour days, 6 days a week. That's kind of common. When I wasn't, I was probably racing my bike, in my spare time. But when I say make more money, the thing is, if you're listening, you have talents, right? You're here to help people in this world. And that's what I tell my boys, say, if you want to make money, find a way to help people. The more people you help, the more money you will make. It's very, very simple.
I got to stop you right there. I got to stop you right there. Guys, put a pin on what he just said. The most successful people on the planet are the ones that add the most value to others. Okay.
Absolutely.
I give you just a simple example. Jeff Bezos, Amazon. Okay. I can buy the headphones that Chris has on in about 30 seconds on Amazon right now. I can buy the picture that's behind him on the wall in 30 seconds on Amazon. So, that's just an example.
You can't buy that picture on Amazon, just to be fair.
Maybe
but anyway.
not. Okay. All right. Maybe no, is that one you took on your bike or something?
It's a limited run, but anyway.
All right. Well, anyway, bottom line is, you know what I'm saying, and figure out how to help people and add value. And sorry, I just had to pin that. Please continue. That's just so
listen,
important.
Listen, that's spot on. I love it when you jump in, because I'm like, what do you think, Ron? So you've got to find a way to make more money, whether it's a career shift or a business on the side, or look, I'll give you a great example. My wife is an architect. We had 2 kids. They go back to daycare. She goes back to work. We do the math at the end of the year. We pay taxes. We pay for daycare. And guess what? We came up with $11,000 after she went to work. We kept $11,000. That is, we lost $11,000 after paying taxes and daycare with my wife's income. If she stayed home and didn't make any money, we would have saved $11,000.
Wow.
It's crazy, right? And if you're listening, you probably have this problem, right? You make money, your spouse works, your partner works, you're paying a bunch of taxes, you have kids, you're trying to balance all this stuff. And the system isn't always designed to really help you move ahead.
Oh, and it's never as designed. It's not, you're sugarcoating it. It is not designed for employees. It's designed for what we do. Right.
Exactly. It is a struggle. And I mean, can you imagine? I'm sitting there with my wife, who went to school longer than I did, and I have a master's degree, right? To get an architecture degree. Then she spent 3 years going through all the certifications so she can be a licensed architect, right? And guess what? We said, hey, it would make more sense for you to stay home than go to work.
Financially, make more sense.
Financially.
That's crazy.
The punchline is, she said no. I said, do you want to stay home? She said no. I said, good. I don't want you to stay home either. I said, let's figure out something. She started her own business. So she worked on the side, started her own business, her own practice. And we started building spec homes. So we built another business. I looked at a bunch of different things. So we said, okay, you're going to start your own business. We're going to start a business together. We used that income from the spec homes that we were building to generate investable capital that we could put into passive investments in the multifamily space. And then my wife, after about a year, was able to phase out, and she had to take the leap. We together, agreed on that. She took the leap, and she was able to replicate her income in less hours. And now she makes about 3-4 times what she was making. Doing what?
As
an architect.
As an architect, but in her own business, though. It's now her own business. Got it.
It's her own business. She works on her own. She chooses who she works with, when she works, and what projects she works on.
That's beautiful.
But the thing is, we went through the same thing. We went through that same thing. I was coaching cyclists on the side when I was a medical device rep. So even though I was making good money, Rod, I said, well, I want to make more money, and I want to have some business deductions and write-offs because I was a W-2 employee. And a lot of times I'd be sitting around waiting for cases to start. Sometimes I'd be sitting in the hospital for 2 or 3 hours with nothing to do. I was like, I can create some additional capital by doing this. So I
want to pin that. I want to pin what you just said. So you recognize the fact that you had downtime, guys. And I know if you're listening, that you have this happen as well. If it's in traffic, if it's, commuting, if it's whatever. And so I'm the same way. If I have downtime, I have to have something to do. So, I just wanted to pin that because that is really good.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I've always been one of those, people that's always looking for constant improvement. Then you asking for epiphanies earlier. About 6 or 7 years ago, I sit down with my accountant. Pretty good year. Sit down with him, and we had some deals sell, and I was still working. I had a really good year. Wife, her business was in full swing. Picture this: you sit down with your accountant. He pulls out a bottle of bourbon. I like bourbon, but it's pretty early in the day. It's maybe 4:00 in the afternoon. I'm his last appointment of the day, though. Maybe it's 4:30. He pulls out a glass. He pours bourbon in the glass. He sets it on the table in front of me. He says, "Chris, what number were you prepared to hear today?" And I said, "Huh?" He goes, "Before I tell you, why don't you take a sip?" So my accountant literally poured me a drink before he told me the amount of taxes I had to pay. And I said, I said, this is crazy. It was another one of those moments where I'm like, so now my wife and I made it and we're giving up, 100, 6 figures in taxes a year. And it's like, wait a minute. So if I want to invest $100,000, Rod, I had to earn $200,000. You know how long it took me to earn $200,000? So I was like, this is crazy. How can I do this better? And again, I get upset when people, say, oh, Trump doesn't pay taxes or Elon Musk doesn't pay taxes.
That's because he's smart.
They didn't make the rules.
No, he takes advantage of the rules that were made long time ago. I remember paying $500,000 in taxes, and I'm like, never again. This is insanity. And that's the beautiful thing about our business, right? I mean, you get into real estate full bore, you don't pay taxes. That's the way the laws are designed. And, it's not taking advantage of anybody. We're providing so much value. They mitigated the taxes for people that are providing housing and so on and so forth and infrastructure in the real estate space. And It's probably one of the biggest benefits we have, right?
It's amazing. Yeah. So, excuse me. So I said then and there, I got to do it a different way. I got to do it a different way. And I was investing with a group, and I was sitting there in that mentorship program, and the GP that we invested with, that I eventually partnered with for our first deal, he said, "Hey, I haven't paid taxes in 5 years." Yeah. That's what I needed to do.
Me either.
That's what I needed to do. Yeah. So that's when we started building our syndication business. And because I said, hey, a lot of people ask me what to do, where to invest. And I said, I need to start changing the way I'm making money and doing that. And that was a huge challenge, walking away from a 18-year career, making, high 6-figure income after building my business and building my,
I get scary. That's scary. Very scary.
It was a big jump, but
I've had a lot of students do it. High paying jobs. So it's very exciting, but it's scary. They call me like, oh, what do you think? I'm like, man, what has your income surpassed what you were making? Yes. Well, then there you go. Okay.
Well, and listen, Rod, I think there might be a bigger part of it. And I don't know, some people might shake their heads when I say this or might not like hearing it out loud. But when I was going through that process, I meditated on it. I had, conversations with, it was a different coach at the time. And I was trying to figure out what was my limiter? Like, why was because that same accountant said, Chris, you're good. Your passive income, your savings, all this stuff, like you're fine. Like you can leave your job. I woke up one day and I thought, yeah, but if I leave, who's going to call me tomorrow? Who's going to need my help? And I think in today's society, all these things have changed and all the politics that are going on, but there's something that's not changed. If you're a man in society today and you're a father and you're a husband and you're a provider, look, our society still puts a lot into what you do as a career and how much you make. And there's a lot of pride in that. And I can tell you from somebody with 18 years in a career, and look, I started selling when I was 12. So it was really like 30 years in a career. But when somebody says, oh, we're going to take that identity away, just whoop, you don't have that identity anymore. So it says, hey, what do you do? And instead of being like, oh, I'm a VP or a director with this company, I make all this money, I do this, because people know, right?
And that was a hang up for you, the title and all that. Wow, interesting.
Well, it wasn't so much the title. I did have some opportunities that I passed up, and I certainly was kind of like, ooh, but I knew my kids didn't want it. But it was the relevance, Rod. It was the feeling of knowing if somebody called me that I was able to be relevant and helpful.
Well, it was your perception of relevance. Let's be real. That's really what it was. Okay, because you're still relevant. That's correct. It was just your perception, and it's really ego. If you get right down to it,
it was ego.
We all have.
It was ego.
Yeah,
it was ego.
And I have it. My God, I mean, I used to have it really bad. I had to do the whole Lamborghini, Rolls Royce, stupid shit. To try to make myself, show that I'm worthy. Same stuff. So I feel you, man. And well, it's really impressive that you've had such great coaching to identify these mental roadblocks, and we all have them, guys. Okay, we have these limiting beliefs, and that I'm too old, I'm too young, I'm too smart, I'm too I don't have enough time, I don't have enough money, I'm not analytical enough, I'm not strong enough, blah blah blah. It's again, the acronym for belief systems is BS. Just don't forget that. Okay, don't forget that. Well, listen, buddy, you've added tremendous value. I'm going to have you back on the show. I'm bumping up against a hard stop, unfortunately, but really you've added tremendous value.
Rod, I truly appreciate it.
And I've really enjoyed this time with you, and I absolutely want to do it again. We can go much deeper the next time, but thanks for coming on, my friend.
Rod, thanks for the opportunity. I really appreciate it. I wish you and your family all the best.
Likewise, buddy. Thanks.
Rod, I know a lot of our listeners are wanting to take their multifamily investing business to the next level. Now, I know you've been hard at work helping our Warrior students do just that using our ACT methodology, which is awareness, close, and transform. Can you explain to the listeners how they can get our help?
You bet. Guys, we've been going nonstop for 3 years, building an amazing community of like-minded people. And our coaching students, which we call our Warriors, have had extraordinary results. They've purchased thousands and thousands of units. And last year, we did over 1,000 units with our students. And we're looking to grow this group and take it to the next level. We're looking for people who want to follow a proven framework that's really step by step, and then leverage our systems and network to raise equity, to find and close deals, and to build partnerships nationwide. Now, our Warrior community is finding success in any market cycle. So if you're interested in finding out more about how you can become more of our incredible network and take advantage of the incredible opportunities that are coming very soon, apply to work with us at mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 72345, and we'll set up a call so you can check us out and we can check you out. That's mentorwithrod.com or text CRUSH to 72345.